You've been waiting for it, you've been asking for it, you've been yelling about it all over the internet. Well, it's finally here, an NVIDIA GPU that can slot into a framework laptop. Specifically, this is an RTX 5070 laptop GPU that is inside of the graphics module for the Framework Laptop 16. Now, the Framework Laptop 16, not new. You've seen it before. It actually got released with its own graphics module, which I actually have installed here. It was the Radeon RX 7700S, kind of a more mid-tier of the Radeon mobile lineup. This is also about mid-tier of the NVIDIA lineup, but a lot of people have been clamoring about NVIDIA, so Framework has finally delivered it. I put it through its paces. I've already done some tests, but first up, I want to show you the graphics module itself. Second up, we're going to show off how to install it if you haven't seen that, kind of go over the Framework Laptop 16 if you haven't seen that, and then I will get to the performance because it's a little interesting. Not only did I do some performance testing in Windows, I actually did a little bit in Linux as well, so you're going to want to stay around for that one. But first, the actual hardware. So we'll do a side-by-side with the Radeon version once we get it unplugged, but let's just do a little quick tour. You can see on here the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5070. It doesn't say laptop. It actually technically should say laptop because this is the laptop part, but you can see that it's got two heat pipes running off to the fin stacks, one for each side, and then two fans. These are Cooler Master made fans. You can see the logo on them. And it looks like it's connected with some sort of copper heat plate, you know, kind of transferring the heat away. This looks, you can see a little bit of the thermal pads for the VRMs here. This also looks like a little bit of heat dissipation for the VRMs. I'm going to assume, I did not take this apart. I needed to test it, so I didn't want to risk damaging anything. Also, they did confirm that this is a phase change material, just the classic Honeywell PTM 79 something. I don't remember the actual number, but yeah, the Framework claims that it's nice and cool, performant. They redesigned it a little bit compared to the Radeon version. And the graphics module is sold separately. You can get this separate, or you can get it in a bundle already pre-configured if you're buying a brand new laptop 16. But the graphics module itself comes in a simple box. Inside the box, most importantly, is this. This is the little bridge. I actually don't know the technical name for this, but this essentially lets the graphics module talk to the main board of the Framework 16. So yeah, let's open this thing up and show you how it works. So first things first, of course, we got to shut down Windows. We got to power it down. We should not do this with any operating system running, not even Linux. It can't handle that. While it's shutting down, in order to get the top plates off, which is how we're going to get to the graphics module, you can see the graphics module is around the back, but really you have to uninstall it first from underneath the top plate here. With the Framework 16, obviously you can get different configurations. I have the 10 key option here, so the trackpad is actually offset to the left, but no matter the configuration, it's always the same. There's these two little tabs that you just slide out, one on the right side, one on the left side, and then you can just slide out the actual expansion bays. I'm going to take these out, I'm going to throw them over here, and then for the top slots here, whether it's the keyboard or whatever LED displays, they offer a bunch of different stuff. There's a little bit of a pull tab so you can release it from the pogo pins. You see the pogo pins line up here, so that's how they're able to expand and move stuff around. You can take out the numpad, and then there's actually two on the keyboard because it's a little wider, but same thing, just connected with pogo pins. And here is how you get into the rest of the internals, but you would have to unscrew, what is this, 17 screws I think it is, to get the whole top plate off. But for the graphics module itself, you actually don't need to take the whole plate off. So to get to the graphics module specifically, we're looking at this little flap here. It has a little pull tab, and it just is a little plastic piece on a hinge. The problem I've had is that actually the hinge doesn't like stop all the way back, so it's a little bit easier to just pop it out and not worry about the hinge. And here we can see that this is already has pre-installed this little bridge piece that I showed earlier that came with the new expansion module. I believe these are the exact same part. No, they're actually a little different on the product number, so maybe they changed, but this is the one that came to me with the Radeon module. So all you got to do is unscrew 4 screws for the main module part. I'm going to go side to side here. And it's just a little simple lift off. You can see all the connections to pass over from the graphics module to the main board, and you can see the connections here. This side is the graphics module, this side is the main board for the laptop. So those two things need to talk, and that's how the GPU talks to the rest of the system. There's two more screws we have to do. These two right here are actually holding the module in place so that it doesn't go flying out. These are captive. The other ones are captive as well, but these are, not only are the screws captive, they're on this little hinge arm that you know, you don't want to mess with. It's done. We're done in here. Now the next step is to come back out, and we're gonna pull on the module itself. You can see the module here, and boom, it just easily slides out. So with it out, we can see the difference, if there are any, between the Radeon RX 7700S, which is on the top, and the nvidia GeForce RTX 5070 laptop, which is on the bottom. You know, like at first glance, I'm not seeing a ton different about the design. It actually is pretty similar. It looks like the VRM situation here is a little bit different on the Radeon version compared to the nvidia version, so it's fairly similar. I believe when I talked to Narav, the CEO of Framework, in a separate video, he was talking about, you know, kind of redesigning the thermals from the original generation of the 7700S, so that it's cooler, quieter, things like that. But essentially, it is the same kind of thing, and obviously needs to have the same overall footprint to be able to fit in the graphics module. Both of them also does fast charging with this USB-C port on the back. You don't have to use this. You can charge this with another port, but it is there if you want. And with the modules off, we can see the exposed underside. You can see the actual fan grill. This is from the top cover. A little bit more venting underneath the actual keyboard here. And then, yeah, you see the aluminum chassis. You know, it's rigid. It's in there. Also, be careful. You see the hinge. You know, you don't want to get this all gunked up because it is exposed. You also see the magnets. So these are not super strong magnets, but the magnets do help hold it in place, especially while you're trying to install it. So let's go ahead and install the new module. So this is the 5070. We're going to line it up and slide it down, and boom. Easy as that. So I'm going to hold on to it while I lay it back down. Open it up, and we're essentially reversing the process here. The first thing is to screw in these two screws that are going to hold it in place. There you go. That was easy. Now let's put the connection in, and you can see there's actually little teeth here. They line up with this little piece right here that kind of sticks out. So you can, I think, physically slot it this way, and maybe it doesn't really matter, but every time I've seen it, the teeth have lined up on the back side of the device. And I forgot to mention that this actual screwdriver comes with the Framework laptop itself. It's a combination. It only has 2 bits here, the T5 and the Philips Zero. So everything that you need to do to service this laptop can be done with this. It also has a little end with a plastic spudger, but we didn't need it for this. So let's put that little plastic hinge back on. I actually wish this was designed a little bit differently, but whatever, it's fine. It's got a little magnet on it right here that holds it in place, and there we go. All we got to do is put the keyboard back in, the expansion modules back in. And one of the things I will note is that it is awesome that you can upgrade these Framework laptops. Obviously, that's a big push for Framework, is to have repairability, upgradability, you know, and be able to have your hardware around for a lot longer. But it does come with a little bit of drawbacks. You can see specifically on this module right here, it actually doesn't completely lock in place. It has a little bit of a wiggle to it. This one's locked in place, but this one's not. So I thought maybe this was the actual expansion tray thing here. So even if you switch it, I'm going to switch it, put it back into place, and you can see like there's still a little bit of wiggle. So I mean that's the trade-off with framework devices. It's not the most polished experience, but what you get out of it is repairability and upgradability. So that's the gist. I'm going to plug it back into power with the 240 watt power brick, which I say is nice and compact, and it connects via USB-C with this cable. One of the ends is terminated with a right angle. Just going to plug into power here. I'm actually going to plug in power through the back port here to show you that it can power the device off of that back port. All right, so I've powered on the device. I actually took a second to install the driver package that Framework provides for this laptop. We can see that the NVIDIA driver is loaded. You also see this little indicator button for the GPU activity of the discrete GPU activity specifically. And also we can see that we are indeed getting a charge off of plugging it into the graphics module itself. So opening up Task Manager, we can also see that GPU 0 right here is the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5070 laptop GPU. It is being seen by Windows. The rest of the specs of the device as sent to me by Framework. The main board itself has the AMD Ryzen AI 7 350. This is actually the first time I'm seeing this processor, so it was kind of interesting to do a little test versus the HX 370. We'll get to that in a second. The memory configuration they sent me were 2 sticks of 8 gigs, so a total of 16 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM at 5600 megatransfers per second. The internal storage that Framework sent me was a Western Digital Black SN770 with a 1 terabyte capacity. That is what I loaded Windows on and did all my testing. And then I actually threw in a 2230 NVMe SSD that I had that was half a terabyte Micron based that I installed Fedora on. So once again, we'll get to the Linux testing in a little bit. We also see that the integrated into the processor itself has the Radeon 860M graphics. And essentially, the laptop is designed with Optimus to be able to switch between the internal graphics and the discrete graphics so that you don't have to eat up a bunch of juice running just light application stuff. So right now, like you saw, if I hover over here, it's telling me that the 5070 is actually inactive because I'm not doing anything intensive, and that's how I want it. I want it to prioritize battery. But say I run something like 3D Mark, which is a benchmarking tool that we use to test out the GPUs. Once again, I do have the numbers, and you can see the screen is flashing here to switch over to the discrete GPU, and here we go. We have this little pop-up from the NVIDIA container saying that it is running on the NVIDIA GPU, and also this little indicator here has now lit up, and we can see that it is no longer inactive. There are actually 2 programs that it's running on, so it has switched over to just using that discrete GPU. All right, Adam from the future popping in to talk about something that I've been working on since I last did the testing. We will get to the testing in a second, but I've had a couple issues. Number one, I had an issue where every time I would swap the graphics expansion module, whether it was in Windows or Linux, the system would freeze up for a while. Like, I mean, I've got some B-roll to show here that it is frozen, it's not responsive. It usually comes back within a minute or two, but that is not intended behavior. So Framework actually did send me a whole separate machine to see, to see if it was the machine, to see if it was the interposer, which is a little connection thing. And I can say on the new machine, that it seems to be solved. I am no longer getting that freezing issue when I'm swapping graphics modules. But the other thing I'm getting is that every time I plug the power cable into the Radeon RX 7700S, I am not getting a charge off of that cable. I have to charge it off of the port, which is not a big deal, but it includes that port. And it makes me think that there might be something wrong with either the graphics module I have or just some other setup. Either way, once again, this kind of points to the fact that this is not a fully polished experience. I've run into a couple weird problems here and there with the hardware, and I appreciate that it is modular and repairable, but there are some weird hangups that are unfortunate with this system. Either way, I was still able to test it, so let's get to the testing now. I did some testing. I did it a couple ways, and I included some other devices to test against. I didn't have a one-to-one configuration for a laptop to go specifically against it. I did have other 5070 base laptops, but no 350 on the AMD side, so there's not like for like. I'll include some stuff in the charts. Also, I didn't do a ton of testing. I only tested on AC power. I only tested with the OS set to balanced, and I did synthetic benchmarks just to kind of get a taste of the performance you can get. The first tests I did are CPU based. I ran Cinebench in single threaded, and you can kind of see how that 350 compares to the HX 370. It's pretty close. Not the best out there, but not too bad. Multi-threaded, obviously it lags behind a little bit because it does have less cores and some of those other beefier options, but not bad. Switching over to Geekbench, once again, single threaded, yeah, and especially in Geekbench, not a big deal. We're not seeing a big change of pace here, but once again, going over to multi-threaded, we're seeing, you know, lower numbers. But guess what? It's got less cores, so of course it's going to present it that way. Now let's get to the GPU stuff, because that's what is interesting. So I tested the system with both the 5070 and the 7700S in a couple different ways. The first one is, once again, Geekbench. So this one was OpenCL test, and you can see that, of course, that 5070 is just going to be more powerful than that 7700S. It uses more wattage. It is actually indeed a little bit louder, but not too bad. I wouldn't call this the worst laptop that I've heard in the testing lab, but I mean, it's not cool and silent. Switching over to Vulkan for Geekbench, you can see that the 7700S actually closes the gap a little bit with the 5070, and that's because, surprise, surprise, AMD typically does better in Vulkan, and so, I mean, you're still seeing an increase with the 5070, but not too bad. Switching over to something a little more intensive, we got 3D Mark Steel Nomad. This one, you can see that the 7700S was just lacking, but that 5070, it lines up pretty much right there with that other 5070 base laptop that I have, even though the actual processor is a little bit of different configuration. The other one actually has a little bit more RAM too, but I mean, it's within spitting distance, which is nice to see. Now those numbers are all fine and dandy, but you might be here for Linux testing. Yeah, that's right. I have Fedora 22 installed on this Framework 16. It is officially supported by Framework, so I wanted to load it up and see how these graphics modules performed in Linux versus Windows. I do have to couch this just a little bit. Number one, I am very early on in my Linux journey. If you want to hear about it, you can go subscribe over at Dual Boot Diaries. We got a great podcast going over there with Will Smith. Really fun times. Number two, I'm very early on with my Linux testing as well. So take this with a grain of salt. I'm still learning how to test on Linux. I'm still learning the best way to properly compare A and B on Windows and Linux. But there are a couple tests that are platform agnostic that work on both Windows and Linux. So I decided to run those. That being Geekbench and Crossmark. So let's look at those numbers now. And not only do I have the numbers for the 5070 laptop, I do also have the numbers for the 7700S, and it's both in Windows and Linux. Now you can see on the Geekbench CPU test, you know, we're not seeing a huge difference. Obviously the different graphic modules are not going to change any of that, but I wanted to test on the CPU anyway, just to see if there was a difference there. The multi-threaded, we see maybe a slight decrease on Linux, which is interesting. I wouldn't have assumed that Windows would actually be faster in the multi-threaded, but it is what it is. Once again, maybe I configured them wrong. So this is just kind of a first step in the journey of Linux testing. But let's switch over to GPU test. Now, I wasn't actually able to get Geekbench to run OpenCL. From what I understand, there's some limitations with OpenCL on Linux. I also don't want to have it run with a wrapper. Either way, it just wouldn't run. It wouldn't give me that option. It would fail out. So I don't have those numbers, but I do have the Vulkan version of those numbers. And we can see that Vulkan does indeed play better on Linux, but there is a weird result at the end there. For some reason, the RX 7700S turns in a worse score in Linux versus Windows. This could be because I was running Fedora 42 and there were newer drivers in Windows, but I'm not sure. So that is an interesting data point. And then the last test I did was Crossmark. It's really lightweight, kind of meant to test the whole system, but it is one of the best ways to kind of test against basic stuff that you're going to do daily. Web browsing, some photo editing, some document editing, all with open source software, so it runs both on Windows and Linux. There, we're not seeing a huge difference. I mean, once again, it is a lightweight test anyway, but either way, it's an interesting data point. So now let's wrap this up. I have two thoughts to go over. The first is the Framework 16 itself, because this is actually my first time getting some time with it. As somebody who's used other Framework devices like the Framework 13 and the Framework Desktop, I do appreciate the ethos of Framework to a upgradable, repairable device. I think that is a great thing to applaud, and they've been going at this for a while now. It's about 5 years since they've kind of announced and launched products, and they're continuing on. And we're seeing the second generation of the graphics module for the Framework 16. So that is a good sign that they're going to continue to go. And the second point is the upgrade from the 7700S to the 5070. And a lot of people, once again, were waiting and hoping that Framework would get an nvidia device in people's hands, and they did it. I don't know how long it took to work with nvidia to design something like this. Nvidia is not a company that likes to do one-off kind of stuff, so I'm surprised that they were able to work with Framework and get something going. Once again, it's something to applaud Framework for, because like having a swappable GPU is something a lot of vendors have done in the past, and it has not always been successful. And this is one of the only solutions that is viable and it's out there. And in most scenarios, that the jump from the 7700S to the 5070 laptop part is a substantial upgrade. Once again, it depends on what you're doing and what you want to do. It does draw more power. It is hotter. It is a little bit louder. The GPU driver stuff in Linux gets better support, but AMD still on the Linux side reigns supreme, so that is why Framework is continuing to sell the 7700S for people who want to do Linux stuff, but hopefully the NVIDIA stuff will continue to get better. All in all, it was interesting to be able to test a scenario like this. Once again, most laptops you can't swap out a GPU, so it was kind of fun to go through that process and just have it work for the most part, asterisk. And yeah, hopefully Framework continues to pave the path for repairable, upgradable devices. I do want Framework to think a little bit more about the partners that they work with. Specifically, the partnership with Omarchi is something that a lot of people have pointed to as kind of something that have shaken their trust in Framework. And yeah, we're not going to get into it here. This is about the Framework 16, but it is something to look into, and hopefully Framework can kind of figure out a better way to message that stuff and work with partners, continue to grow, continue to get repairable devices in people's hands, because I do believe in their mission, and it was a fun time testing this. But yeah, let me know what you think. If you want to see more laptop testing videos, be sure to subscribe here on PCWorld, and we will catch you in the next video. Bye.